Greg, welcome to studio and thanks for joining us. You recently published a very interesting book, How South Africa Works. We're 21 years post-democracy and a lot of questions are being asked about, is our democracy working? What does it mean? What drew you to write the book?
Well, I think there were two big concerns. One is our growth rates in South Africa seem to be stuck at under 2%, which is clearly too low, and we wanted to look at what we needed to do to be able to raise those growth rates. And that relates to the second point, which is our unemployment levels are too high. More than 1/3 of South Africans are unemployed or have stopped looking for work. And that's no way, I think, 21 years later, that we want to build a inclusive society. So we were driven by trying to answer the two questions of growth and unemployment. And to do that, we travelled around South Africa, did more than 300 interviews of businesses, of policymakers, of people at different levels of government in trying to come up with some answers across a variety of sectors.
Now, we've seen a lot of other publications, a lot of policy documents coming out of government and the private sector. What differentiates the work that you've done?
Well, fundamentally, we're saying that there's going to be no silver bullet solution, that change has to come from within South Africa itself, and that this is largely in the hands of South Africans, and that policy differences can make a great deal of important difference to growth and to employment creation. We need to find the way to incentivize employers to take on more people, and that should be a key focus of government policy.
A lot of commentators have remarked that the chasm isn't really the lack of ideas on how to get the economy moving and address unemployment. It's really how do we get different stakeholders in the economy and the country to work together?
Yeah, I think a key part of the answer is that they need to start talking to each other. We need to end this confrontational relationship. The relationship's either very close or it's too confrontational, and we need to make the environment more conducive to the small guy and to the small factory owner who's employing just a handful of people, make it easier for them to take on more people and to grow their businesses. I think the relationship over 21 years is perhaps more adversarial today than in any other stage in our history, and certainly that's a key part of this employment picture that we have in South Africa, which is particularly difficult for young South Africans. We need to do something. At 70% of young South Africans under the age of 30 are unemployed. Clearly is no way to build, again, a modern, inclusive society.
Are we all speaking the same language? Are young black professionals, for example, looking at BE in the same way that executives and corporates are?
Well, I think that is clearly one of the differences, and I think the difference in language between business, government and labour is perhaps where the greatest divides exist. And within those groupings, of course, there's some people who draw advantage from current government policies. But I think overwhelmingly there's a challenge out there, which is firstly that there's a very high cost to employment. There's a growing trend globally away from employing people towards greater capital and technology intensity and towards economies of scale. And those two forces together mean that more attention has to be paid by all those disparate groupings to the sort of South Africa that we want to build, and how we're going to build it through greater competitiveness, which is the underlying plank of what we have to say in our book.
But is the perceptions of what the issues are not different? So Labour will say the problem is that Labour wages are too low. Government will say, business will say we need to be more competitive.
Yes, and clearly there's ideological differences in that as well as differences of interest groups and of personalities. But what we point out in the book, that to use the phrase, there's a mutual suicide pact at the moment out there, and we have to find a way to end that suicide pact. If we go down, it's not one group going down in this, it's all groups going down together.
Were there any gems or new discoveries that you found from speaking to this wide variety of people that haven't been brought to the fore before?
I think there are a lot of South Africans making money out there still, in spite of the fact that we have low growth. That's been, I think, something of a revelation across a whole variety of sectors, including agriculture and mining traditionally, which haven't done that well in South Africa in recent memory. And what has particularly impressed upon us was the range of new entrepreneurs emerging with tremendous talents and able to make a real business, real global businesses in South Africa in a whole variety of different sectors, services, manufacturing, all sorts of things. What we have to do is try and increase that number so that we can increase the pace and scale of employment across the country in a whole variety of sectors. So we have the talent. We just have to put the conditions in place to make it happen on a grander scale.
There's 21 years, not too short a period. If we look at the rest of the continent, where there's massive growth that's happening, but it's stemming from where liberation happened in the 60s. Are we not being too hard on ourselves?
Well, perhaps by African standards, we may be too short a period to judge South Africa's success, but not by two other critical standards. One is the expectations of our population, which are not what they were in the 1960s and 70s. Our expectations and aspirations are informed by what people see outside, not just what they see in their own communities and environments. And secondly, by the standards of what we've come to accept as a global norm in terms of growth elsewhere in other parts of the developing world, notably in Southeast Asia. A lot of people expect you to grow at 5% plus rates on a consistent basis over several decades, and we haven't been able to achieve that in South Africa, and I think that's what we've been measured against. We've been measured against Asia, not against the rest of Africa, and been measured against what people see on offer elsewhere, not what they see on offer necessarily only at home.
Wish you all the best, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.